Hi, this is Jill Baxter. I am back with my students from McGeorge School of Law, and Flavio and Saphalta are going to talk about the $20 million question, the revenue that's going to be shared. So, Saphalta, under the House versus the NCAA settlement, there's $20 million that can be going to athletes. Tell me a little bit about what that means. What does revenue sharing mean?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Professor Baxter. First of all, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. So the House versus NCAA case settlement, I think it's a very monumental shift in the college athletics in terms of revenue sharing, and I think it is one of the most important prong of the case. So basically, how I understood in the most easiest term was that it means now the schools are going to be directly paying their athletes from the revenue generated from the athletic department, and this is something that was not allowed or practiced like even to less than 2 months ago, and I think this is very interesting in that sense. So basically what this means is that starting July 1st, 2025, the NCAA Division I schools, especially those in the Power 5 schools, and I think it includes ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and the Notre Dame school. And these schools are permitted to distribute up to $20.5 million per year to their athletes. Now, this cap is subjected to increase by 4% each year for their first 3 years, and I think the team are going to reevaluate it every 3 years over the duration of a 10-year period. Now, moving on to the...
Carol, one question for you.
Mhm.
Other schools can opt into this and distribute the $20 million,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
It's not just the Power 5 schools.
No, it's not just the Power 5.
Okay.
Like the other school, for Power 5, they are required to do this, but the other
Okay.
schools, they have the option whether to opt in or not. So if they opt in, like they must follow all the rules stipulated by the House case. So that includes the rosters, the pays, and everything. But if they don't, they are free to go with the traditional payment and scholarship systems.
And the one that were required, why were they required?
Why were they?
Why were they required and didn't get a choice to opt in? Do you know?
They were part of the class action lawsuit.
Exactly. They were
Oh,
part of
yeah.
They were the defendants in the class actions. It was the NCAA and the Power 5.
And now some of the schools that get to opt in, they don't have to reach that, just as the power conference schools, they don't have to reach that $20.5 million number.
It's
So
a May. It's a May. Are you saying, do you think all those other schools, Power 5, have to distribute $20 million?
They don't.
Okay. Nobody really does,
Mhm.
right? If they don't have it, they don't have to do it.
I think it's just like a maximum ceiling rather than the base payment. So.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. So
Mhm.
keep going with what you were explaining.
Oh yeah. So just a little bit on like how did they come up with the cap number? I want to discuss on that point.
Okay.
So
How did they do that?
that's pretty interesting. I think like because they just decided like they're gonna take like 22% of the average revenue among the students of Power 5 conferences, and these.
Why did they pick 22%?
So we did a little bit of research and we found out that like they came up with before this like the student athletes were getting paid like 0%.
Right.
And they compared with like the NFL players and they were getting paid like 51% or something like
They
that.
get 51% of the revenue.
Yeah,
Yes, they do.
51% of the revenue. So I
Yeah.
think like they came up with like sort of like a midpoint between those things, like the numbers. So I think that's why they came up with like 22%, but I'm not really sure about how they came up with
Midpoint would have been about 25, but we see who had the better lawyer.
it. Yeah.
That's funny, Mario.
So these revenues are basically calculated from media rights, streaming rights, ticket sales, and sponsorship deals.
Okay.
So yeah, and so the 20.5 million cap, like how is it gonna be calculated while distributing the funds to the athletes? So this has not been actually required by the schools to do like a basic structure. Rather, it is more of like a discretionary in nature. However, there has been a suggested model which includes like 75% of it goes to football, and 10 to 15% goes to men's basketball, and 5 to 10% goes to women basketball, and the rest of it goes to 5% goes to the other sports. And I think the Texas school has already opted into this model, but I'm not sure about the other schools. I think we'll definitely be seeing more in the coming weeks. So, yeah, basically, this is the rundown of what the revenue sharing is going to be moving forward.
Okay, so my question to you, Flavio, is how are these athletics programs going to handle this distribution if there is no revenue?
So, as we mentioned before, it's not mandatory. Some schools can opt in. Non-revenue programs can continue under the amateur model. Most programs actually lose money in the NCAA. Most athletic departments, out of the 66 schools that were part of the class action law school, only 28 of them actually pull a profit. And most of that money is coming from the football and basketball departments. So that would, it's going to create obstacles for those schools that don't make a profit to distribute the money to those programs that don't make any revenue at all. They might end up getting dissolved, or they might end up football and basketball might separate itself totally from and end up being a different legal entity that can maybe foresee some of the challenges that present themselves. For the most part, these other sports have been subsidized from donations, student fees, institutional funds. That could still keep happening. But it also can, like I said, increase the elimination of sports. Might spin off into separate athletic departments, and schools might actually have to get rid of some of these sports, unfortunately.
That has been a concern, although most ADs say, I don't want to do this if we have to get rid of sports. Most ADs are saying that, even whether they can afford it or not. One of my questions, and I don't know if you guys have thought about this because this might throw you off guard a little bit, but when you were talking about what the revenue streams that are included, what were they?
The
Ticket- media rights,
sponsorships,
ticket sales,
and sponsorships.
and sponsorships. So what do you think schools are going to do? They're going to try to find other ways to make revenue
Mhm.
that's not off of the athletes' ticket sales.
Oh, you mean like the
Sponsorship.
NIL.
Well, I'm just saying, they're going to find another way to make revenue, okay? Because if it's revenue they generate that is not directly related to the NIL of a student athlete, then it's going into the department.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think, and I'll give you an example. We, or Fresno State, is having a concert, a Shakira concert. Well, that isn't related to any of the athletes, right? But it's going into the athletics department because they're using that facility. So what I'm saying, what I think is going to happen is, and I know this is happening, is they are trying to find out other ways to generate revenue so they can afford what they've been paying and be able to pay the athletes. They've got to figure out ways to increase revenue that's not related to NIL. Do you see what I'm saying?
And that does also present other difficulties. There are some schools that have already allocated so much revenue for specific programs, like the University of North Carolina has already allocated this upcoming season $14 million for just its basketball team, for just its men's basketball team, which leaves $6.5 million for football, for women's basketball, for all these other sports. And it's not just the smaller schools that are kind of being handicapped by these structured, revenue sharing deals, and also it's kind of maybe going to end up being where football ends up becoming even more king. Like in the SEC, there are some schools that rely on, they have to compete with the Alabamas, they have to compete with the Tennessees, like Kentucky, but they also have they're more known for basketball. So it's going to present itself in, difficulties with how do you distribute this money for when you want to get the best basketball player, but you also have to allocate 75% of your revenue to the football team.
Well, that's the suggestion.
But it's a big competitive in the SEC.
Yeah.
$15 million isn't really going much. It really isn't going to amount to much.
Yeah,
But
how many people are going to go over the cap? And they've already promised more than
yeah,
20 million.
that's going to be settled in court. That's going to be.
Well, actually, no. I think the CSC, which is what our other group in the class talked about, they're going to have to regulate that. That's one of their jobs.
From my understanding, they would be handling the NIL deals, wouldn't they?
They also are handling, Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're also going to be, the CSC is going to be in charge of regulating all these new rules. Not just that, but also the cap. They're going to make sure that people are staying within the cap. The problem is they'd already entered into deals and maybe they're already over the cap. And that's going to be a whole nother, I think, big, huge issue. How they're going to solve it, that'll be up to the CSC.
Yeah, and I really just think that, some schools, for instance, in the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, they're going to use all that $20.5 million. And it's, even if only 75% goes to football, that's $15 million. When you have some schools operating in the Big Ten, like Rutgers, who are operating at a deficit, they don't even know where they're going to find that $20.5 million to even if they could give any money to football. So.
Well, that's why it's a may. They don't have to give the whole amount. It's just that it's going to be hard
Definitely,
to compete.
But it's just going to be hard to compete.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to compete
So
if you can't get the players.
So, we're going to get to this a little bit later, but a model that has been brought up is actually revenue sharing amongst the conferences. So if you have they do in the NFL, so if you do the Big Ten, might give money, some of the money that goes to Michigan, goes to Ohio State, would end up trickling down to the Rutgers of the world.
So is that okay? So is this the next question? How will we pay positions? What if a player loses his position? Are we how are they going to decide which position player is getting so much money? Did you delve into that, Saphalta?
Yes, I don't think there has been any mandate regarding to what kind of payment will be there for each kind of position. But we were kind of discussing yesterday, this could be one of the really big problems among the schools, and maybe possible lawsuits regarding okay, some player is very important to the team and they generate a lot of revenue and they're very famous among people, and some people who might just be a substitute or at the back who's not been doing anything, are they going to be paid equally or no? So
no, they're not.
Yeah, no.
I know for a fact they're not.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. No, they're not. I know they're not.
So we kind of came up with the likely approaches, the colleges might come up with in distribution of those funds.
Okay. So what did you come up with?
We kind of came up with maybe they could be a flat stipend model, which could be every rostered athlete could be paid in a sport gets paid the same amount of money.
So there's no discrepancy.
No discrepancy, but maybe everybody gets the same amount of money for a particular kind of sport. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it's tiered by their position or their role or even sport. So maybe if there are high profile positions get more payment and the backup players get paid less. Or they could also be a performance or market value bonuses. So every player gets a set base pay, and based on their performance or awards or even their play time at certain play, they get extra stipends or incentives. And we also that would create it's kind of a hybrid model with a base play plus performance.
Well, this is a huge problem. How we do it in the NFL is that if a player is making, let's say they're making $500,000 as their base salary, and another player is making $1 million as their base salary, they have a whole calculation based on play time. Okay, at the end of the season, they actually calculate the guy who's making $500,000 maybe had 90% of the plays at his position for the year. And the guy at $1 million maybe only had 60%. The guy that's making $500,000 is going to get more of the piece of the pie than the guy who's making $1 million, because and that's how they're evening it out. Because what happens is, a player could start out at the beginning of the season and not be starting, and then by the end somebody gets hurt and they are starting, and so there you've got this whole, hey, I should be getting more because I'm now starting, or I got 5 touchdowns, or I got 15 tackles, and I wasn't even considered a starter at the beginning of the season.
So there's a lot of discretion to the schools. So some schools might just have a straight contract model where they say you're going to be here for 4 years. You're going to pay this much. Mm-hmm. Some might say we pay our quarterbacks $10,000 a game and $5,000 per touchdown, or $100 a minute. So it could be, in minute based.
But then that's pay for play.
Excuse me?
Pay for play.
It's incentive based. It's revenue share.
Well, what do you guys think over there at the CSC? Is it pay for play? If they say if
it's like a pro model.
Yeah, I know it's like a pro model, but is it pay for play if we say you played this many plays this year under the revenue share, and so we're going to give you more. Is that going to be a problem with it, CSC, do you think?
I don't. Yeah.
Go ahead. I think I could see that as being a problem.
Because of the pay-for-play thing and it
Yeah.
not being a valid business purpose.
Why wouldn't it be pay for play if you're saying I'm going to pay you $500,000 if you just play?
And maybe not
the game
because
of
it's
football?
under the revenue share. This is where it's confusing.
Yeah, see, I disagree. I think if it's under the revenue share, then it's almost, it operates at that point like a free market with a market cap, and these coaches can kind of spend their money how they choose to spend their money, and if they want to use analytics to influence their money spending decisions, then they're free to do that.
Yes.
If a school wanted to give $20.5 million to women's tennis, they could do that. So they
Right.
have the discretion to basically use the money as they
Right.
seem fit.
So what happens if a player loses their position? Should they still get the money?
So that's the contract model. If you have, if your contract says I'm getting paid for every single year that I'm here, then you have to abide by a contract. But if you lose your position and now you're getting paid, now you're getting less minutes, then that's going to be affected in your total outcome.
And what if the player leaves?
If the player leaves, then he's going to have to be under the terms of the new school he leaves to.
And what if he doesn't get a new school? This is what's happening. They go in the portal and they don't get another opportunity.
Well,
somewhere.
that's the free market. Sometimes you leave your job and you don't get a new job.
Yeah, okay, interesting, okay. So Valta, were you gonna say something about that, or?
Oh no, just like, I think the schools are gonna do like a contractual basis, so I think it is better like if they decide beforehand, like if they lose this position, then okay, this is gonna happen, so that the player is very well aware, because it's very likely that maybe the player gets injured while during the game and he might not be able to play for the rest of the season. Is it really gonna be fair for him and for the team as well? So I think like the contractual basis is gonna be like a very good model for them. And also like when the player leaves the team, I think it is based on like the roster model right now. So as long as the player is listed on the roster, so he gets paid. But if not, then he doesn't get paid, if I understand it correctly.
Well, if he leaves and goes to another school.
Oh yeah, if
If he leaves, let me tell you, they're out. I mean, the new contracts, a lot of the new contracts are actually putting in clauses in there, kind of like training fees. If you leave, you're gonna have to pay some of this back because we've now trained you, and now you're gonna go get more money someplace else. Some people are doing that. Some people are tying the payments into, making sure they're doing everything they're supposed to be doing, showing up, being on time, going to their workouts. There's a lot
There's
going.
definitely a lot of questions to be answered, but
Yeah.
I think there's going to be certain schools that maybe come up with certain standard models that are outperforming others, and other schools will probably just follow along.
suit, yeah. So do you think this is the beginning of professionalism of college athletes?
I think this is finally ending the bringing it full circle. I think every aspect of college athletics besides the players being paid has already been basically professionalized. The administration, the coaches, the vendors, the broadcasters, they're all making tons of money except for the players. They operate as a professional model, been operating as a professional model already, but now the actual labor is going to be incentivized. This is going to bring up a lot of different issues. And there's some cases right now in front of the National Labor Relations Board that could trying to classify college athletes as employees, and that would entitle them to collective bargaining rights, workers' compensation, and also give them the right to unionize. There's already been some movements to trying to unionize, especially at Northwestern University. Their student athletics have already tried to form unions. There is going to be some, of course, resistance from the schools to try to not unionize, to give collective power to the student athletes. But this was what I mentioned earlier. This might lead to the specific athletic programs just forming their own legal entities and getting away from the NCAA, getting away from the educational aspect of the sport, and just making it a minor league. So I could envision a point in 10 years to 15 years where you have athletes, no more student athletes, but athletes playing for Ohio State University that don't take a class there.
Well, yeah, that's something that's been debated. Is this educational anymore, or has it just become a pro model? that's.
It's been an unpaid minor league for a long time, and now I believe it's just becoming a paid minor league.
Yeah. So Saphalta, do you have any other things you want to add to this?
I think like it's very different because it's like very new, all these models.
Mhm.
So I think we really gotta see, and I think that there's gonna be a lot of possible lawsuits as well. So it's pretty interesting, like what players as well as the schools and the system is gonna come up with in the next coming weeks or even months. So I'm very excited to see as the football season starts, like what is the system going to be, and I'm very happy for the athletes that finally they are getting paid for their value, name, image, and likeness.
Mhm.
And also, I hope to see more commercials from the athletes, I guess. Since,
Oh, during the games.
During the games, like before it was not allowed, I guess,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
now I feel like I'm very excited for them to be like partnering with more brands maybe, and it's very good to see it.
So you're excited
Yeah,
about that?
I'm excited about it, free trade.
Yeah. What about Flavio? Do you have anything else to say about this topic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just glad that I'm a lot for workers' rights, so I'm glad that the labor's finally being paid, and I think that more power to them.
Okay. Well, thanks for being on Born to be a Sports Agent. And if you are currently a student athlete or you know anybody who could be learn something from this information about the revenue share and the issues that these athletes are going to face based on, is it going to be fairly distributed or not? I don't know what's fair. That's what's so difficult, because playing time is very, very questionable, because you really don't know who's going to be the star.
And that's what's going to lead to so much litigation. Triers of facts.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on. So thanks for listening to Born to be a Sports Agent. And again, please subscribe to Born to be a Sports Agent. And if you have any questions, please email Jill Baxter at jillbaxter@me.com. Thanks for listening.